Hey guys, today I'll be going over the case laws. I am Deputy Commander Wolf, and this is for a overview for any law enforcement people that are interested. Use my advice for as a grain of salt. I am not a lawyer, so really this is how much I know about all of this. And if you do have any suggestions or questions, leave me a comment. If anything, consult with a lawyer. So let's get right into it. So the first one I'll be going over is Grant v. Connor. This is a 1989 Supreme Court decision where they resolved the issue of what constitutes reasonable force for excessive force. Excessive force is essentially, hands-on force. So, pulling, putting somebody down on the ground. It's just essentially from this slide you can read on your own, but this slide just really says that you need a reason for every type of force that you use. For example, would you use excessive force on a stressed out mother who is looking for her child and causing this disruption in the public? Or would you use excessive force on somebody who is posing a threat to the public but with no weapon at all, just posing as a threat, swinging out in the public randomly, um, cussing in front of strangers, right? What would you do? Um, so essentially, when you use excessive force, you do all this is just basically just have a objective mindset. So have a smart mindset, have common sense of what a reasonable person would do and why would they choose this type of force, because you need a reason, you need to have common sense in this field, otherwise you won't make it really that far. Alright, so the first scenario, this is a roblox scenario. So you're conducting a traffic stop, the suspect was recklessly driving, individual comes out of the vehicle and steps a couple feet back without the instruction of an officer. What will you do as an officer? So, in real life versus um, in game on Roblox, people would the officer would react differently. So, answer this question on your own. There isn't a right or wrong answer, but really, what would you do? Second scenario is an individual pulls a weapon out at visitor spawn. You see as the officer, you see him pull the weapon. What will you do? For one, would you shoot the suspect? Okay. Would you handcuff the suspect, warn the suspect, or arrest the suspect? So this is a Roblox scenario. So what I would do personally is I would warn the suspect to put the weapon away, warn him the consequences of shooting the weapon. Um, Open carry does exist, so be mindful of that. Otherwise, if the suspect does shoot, then really resort to the level of force that you would use. Let's say the suspect shoots on the air, just arrest the suspect. This is just a Roblox, just arrest the suspect for illegally discharging their weapon. You don't have to shoot the suspect because he's not really shooting at other people. But in real life, then I mean, yeah, you will shoot the suspect because again, he's posing a threat to the public. So just really be mindful of what your answer is. So really ask yourself these questions. These just know this is a Roblox example. So if you are doing this for real life, so really just ask this to yourself: what would you do in real life versus what would you do in the game? All right, third example. You're an officer conducting a traffic stop with two occupants in the vehicle. You're stopping them for a bolo search from a robbery. So there has been a vehicle. The two occupants in the vehicle. The vehicle matches the bolo, and so the passenger occupant leaves the vehicle and pulls a weapon onto you. What will you do? Um, for this, you have to determine what force would you use. So for me personally, I have good aim in this game, so I'll tase and arrest the person for attempted murder. It's clear, it's evident, the vehicle was a part of the robbery. Okay, so you have reason to believe that the vehicle is a part of the robbery. Okay, and the passenger comes out, pulls a weapon right in front of you. So it kind of gives me probable cause that these guys were a part of the robbery. So might as well, you know, try to survive. Second is, wait for them to fire the weapon since open carry exists. Be mindful of that, but in real life, if this was real life, then you would shoot literally the passenger because again, you know, he's he's going to kill you. It's either you die or he dies, or if you're immobilized or he's immobilized, right? What would you do? Um, the stop was illegal despite the passengers don't match the vehicle. So that can be a reason, but again, the bolo matches the vehicle, so you do have reason to believe that the vehicle was a part of it. The stop was legal despite the vehicle matched the one from the robbery, as the bolo was vague. Yeah, I mean, you can argue that some bolos are really vague, so you do want to be mindful. Just it would be nice to have a good description of this. If there was a specific license plate number and the letters, but overall, just this is all just your decision. What would you do? For this, personally, I would either, you know, say shoot and arrest the person for attempted murder or tase, but um, you can interpret it however you want. Next one is we're gonna go into Carroll v. United States, 1925. So this resolved the issue of the automobile searches without a warrant. Um, I did put this because in Roblox, this doesn't really exist. We do have Terry v. Ohio, but you can ignore this. Um, the U.S. Supreme Court established the automobile exception, where an officer can search a vehicle if the officer has probable cause to believe it contains a contraband. So for dummies, essentially, you cannot search a vehicle, right? If the stop was for speeding, you can't search the vehicle because again, you don't have suspicion that there's something in the vehicle, right? You need 100%, you know, suspicion, or you just need 100% probable cause that there's something related to, like the vehicle is related to a crime, or and it has something. So for example, let's say you are stopping somebody for speeding. You see as the person's looking in their glove compartment for their license, you see a small bag of white powder in it, and from there you have probable cause that to believe from your experience as a law enforcement officer that it may be cocaine or methamphetamine. So from there you can search that vehicle for other, well, around that immediate area. But if you do have probable cause to believe that there's some in the container, the container near the wheel, um, you can for sure search that. So first example is that you are an officer conducting a traffic stop for recklessly driving. After everything is settled, you ask the driver if you can search the person. Okay, so this is just a this isn't really a part of Carol v. United States, but this is just more of a Roblox example. So if you're going to use this if you're gonna apply this scenario in real life, then really just go off your what would you do? For when I say two answers, personally, my two answers are is that the officer cannot ask the search because it's outside of the vicinity of the stop, so you're just prolonging the detainment. And the second one is there's just no objective reason to ask for a search. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that you need a reason to ask for a certain, right? That if you're just stopping, you resolve everything, you settled everything, and you say, can I search your persons, can I search this? What, why? What's your reason? Right? You like, even if you're gonna bring the K9, you can't, because again, you're just detaining the person for even longer, more like a longer period of time. The moment when you say that, okay, well here's a ticket, or okay, well here's your warning, from there the detainment is over. Um, from there, I mean, if you're gonna ask for a search, the person might as well just must say or ask at least, are you detaining me, officer? And the officer says yes, then from there it's illegal detainment. So really, there's just officer cannot ask the search of the person, and and there's just no reason for the search to ask for the search. Alright, so second scenario is that you are investigating a abandoned vehicle from a bolo search, okay? So the owner of the vehicle approaches you and questions your actions. Are you legally obligated to search the vehicle? So there is two yeses, two nos on this one. This is just what would you do? And if you think that none of these apply, like from the previous scenarios as well, and the future scenarios that I'll put in this presentation, then, you know, just say, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I won't really do none of these scenarios. I'll do it my own way, but, you know, just understand that every vehicle stop or every bolo search is different. It's never going to be the same process. It's never going to be the same inventory search. Just make sure you do it lawfully and play it safe. Follow the guidelines and follow your training guidelines. So the first answer is yes, because you have reason to believe that the vehicle was a part of the crime. Second, yes, because you have reasonable suspicion, so you need to wait for the original officer to approve, disapprove if the vehicle was a part of the crime that took place. C, no, because you need 100% proof. And D, no, because you cannot search the vehicle that looks similar as from the bolo. So it's just up to you. Next one is Terryview, Ohio. So this one, um, basically, in short, is it just outlines the series of questions of the Fourth Amendment violations that were going on during this time, and even in future times as well. The stop and frisk. So in order to stop somebody and frisk somebody, you need to have a good reason why. So in this Supreme Court decision, so an officer was observing a teenager looking out at a convenience store. He leaves. A couple, I think an hour later or a couple minutes later, he comes back with a friend, hoodies on, um, all in black. So officer has suspicion to believe that they're about to commit a criminal offense. He pets them both and he finds weapons. Essentially, it leads from search incident to arrest. I believe that's a term, but really the officer had reasonable suspicion, and that led up to his probable cause. And I added two key terms. So, an unreasonable search would be essentially like searching somebody without the consent or objecting this reason to believe that the person did a bad thing. So essentially, let's say if I'm the officer and I see somebody looking out at the jewelry store at 12 a.m. in the morning and leaves, right? And as I follow the person, he heads into a home, and I knock and I start asking him what was he doing, and I start, forcing forcing him to be searched from me, right? That's just unreasonable, right? The person could have been, you know, thinking to go to the jewelry store the next day and getting a wedding ring or something. Uh, there's just so many examples that I can say, but that's one example. A reasonable search is essentially the opposite of an unreasonable search. So let's say, same guy goes in a home, and as I take more time to observe, he comes out with a crowbar, mask, black jacket, and he heads back to the store. I confront him right behind the building and, search him. And if I do find there's a weapon, instead of a crowbar, he's carrying a crowbar, but let's say there's a weapon within the jacket, at that point, it's considered as a reasonable search because I believe, like, from my patience and from observing him going back behind the jewelry store and with a mask and a black jacket, from there, it's obvious he's committing an offense. So, scenario number one, you're conducting a foot patrol at VS. You see a person pull a lockpick from 50 studs away. As you follow, you see him in front of the White House gates. What can an officer do? This is what, again, lockpicks are illegal or illegal. It's been going on and off during this time. But me personally, I can stop the individual and search him because, again, I have, suspicion to believe that they're about to trespass um into the property because it's gated, so it's private property. Um, Otherwise, it just depends the date or like the legality of the lockpicks in this game, but it's up to you how you would take this Scenario 2, you're conducting a traffic stop for reckless endangerment. As you come to conclude the stop with a warning, you ask the driver to search them. So again, I already answered this, so for me personally, that would be A, because again, it's just outside the vicinity of the search and you're just prolonging the detention. Scenario 3, as you're observing, you know by firsthand that it takes 5 minutes to either deposit or withdraw the cash, and you enter the bank, you see the individual hugging the computer door and notice your appearance, and we can assume that the individual just walks out after they notice you. So from there, you can reasonably suspect that they were about to commit in a criminal act. So you might as well um, search them because again, it's considered unreasonable to search them if you don't really have any suspicion at all. And it has to be a good reason to suspicion. It has to make sense. But my suspicion here is that when you hug the computer door, he's hiding a lockpick. It can be argued that he was away from keyboard, but why would you hug a computer door, which is the access to the vault? Why would you hug a computer door and just stay there after 5 minutes, right? It just seems he either sucks at lockpicking or he's AFK. So I'll go. My best bet is that he's lockpicking. Tennessee v. Garner. This is another case law. This resolves the issue of deadly force for dummies. You can't. The Supreme Court held that you can't use deadly force if the suspect is unarmed or doesn't really pose a threat to others or police officers. So I use this game example again. Let's say there's this career criminal robbing a bank, and as you enter, you have your guns drawn at him, but then he's AFK, he's away from keyboard. So you don't, in this sense, you can shoot him because it's a game, but if you're gonna apply this to IRL, and let's say this career criminal and he doesn't really have a gun on him, he merely put his hands up on the air. You don't shoot him. Just command him. Have your gun drawn because you don't know what he'll pull against you. But once he's secured, two officers secure him, then really you don't shoot the person. Even if the person was fleeing, was running away from the officers, again, when you're running, right, you don't shoot the person running. You just chase them because you want to apprehend them as safely and securely as possible. Unless they, draw a gun from their pants, then, go right, shoot them because they're going to pose a threat to the public or even to yourselves. So, first scenario, when you're engaged in a gunfight, suspect flees on foot, dropping his weapon, what can the officer do? Personally, it's just what you would do. What I would do is I would just run after the suspect. Tasers IRL, they're not really that accurate. There's so many variables that can go wrong with a taser. So if the officer drops his weapon IRL and he's running away, chase after him. And if you are in a close range of tasing him, then go for the tase. Otherwise, use your weapon as a last resort. Never use it as a first resort. Alright, Tennessee v. Garner, scenario 2. You're engaging in a hot pursuit on foot. The suspect is heading to a nearby abandoned vehicle. So what would you do? In this game, since my aim is pretty good with the taser, I would tase. But again, your this is just your opinion. Again, you don't have to choose one of these answers to answer this scenario because again, this is just these are just the answer key that I put. But otherwise, you can say E, just keep chasing him. Go in your vehicle and chase him. Call for backup. Plan ahead in advance and find out where he's going. Essentially, just really, it's just your decision. It's just what would you do? So the next one is exigent circumstances. So these are the exceptions of the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. So the United States v. McConney outlines the exigent circumstances. There is other case laws about exigent circumstances. Um, so for the first one is let's see, during hot pursuit, when you're going, when there's a fleeing suspect under hot pursuit and they enter their own house, you can chase them within the house because again, it's within the vicinity of this pursuit. Um, if you're doing a search warrant and you hear that the occupants of the home says, you know they say, shit, the cops are here, throw away the evidence, right? You can enter the house, you can break in the house to prevent the evidence being destroyed or tampered. um 3, you can utilize deadly force if the fleeing suspect is armed and a threat to the general public or other officers. So this goes with Tennessee v. Garner. This is a exception to it, where if there is a school shooter and he sees you and he starts running with his gun, you can shoot him because again, he's going to, you know if you take too long to decide what you're gonna do, keep chasing him or allow him to shoot even more kids or even more staff because you're just trying to figure out the legality, right? You're protected under exigent circumstances, so you might as well just shoot the person from, preventing, others from being harmed or killed. Search incident to arrest. So again, for example, when you're arresting somebody for, let's say, for like a general, just for like a small crime, and you find a weapon in them. So let's say they were trespassing, and as you search their persons, you feel a weapon, you grab it, and it was a pistol, right? You prevented a shooting happening. Um, and finally, preventing an escape of a suspect. So it does follow with hot pursuit. I shouldn't really put that there, but if there is, let's say, the suspect is, you're serving a search warrant, you're arguing with the dad, but the suspect is running outside from the backyard. You have a officer, covering that. If he starts running into other people's yards, you can enter their homes because again, under hot pursuit. Essentially, basically, just exigent circumstances are situations where the Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment doesn't apply to officers, to an officer's duty when preventing life-threatening scenarios. Because, like I said for the last one, if the suspect is entering other people's homes, then you don't know what they're gonna do to the people within these homes, because they can kill them or they can shoot them. You just don't know what's gonna happen. So you have to act quick on your decisions. Miranda v. in Arizona, this resolved the issue of self-incrimination confessions, and I guess admitting and admittance. Um, Basically, the Supreme Court ruled that officers must warn a suspect constitutional rights upon them being arrested before answering to an officer's questions that may be incriminating. So when you do arrest a suspect, you do warn them of their rights, remind them the constitutional rights. Otherwise, this doesn't really apply to exigent circumstances and detainments because I'll tell you why. First scenario, let's say you're caught for there's an armed robbery in a donut shop. You detain the suspect. That was, that the witnesses, confronted. That is the suspect, and you feel that the suspect doesn't have any weapons, and you tell the suspect, where is the weapon? And he tells you it's behind the counter. You retrieve it. So for one, did they violate Miranda, or it was under exigent circumstances? So for this, there's only one answer. It's B, and here's the reason. So you don't know where the weapon is. It could have been behind the counter. It could have been outside, behind the garbage can. It could have been anywhere, even on the street. So it's always, it's under exigent circumstances because a homeless person can actually retrieve the weapon and start shooting everybody. Right? It's just under exigent circumstances. Finally, you detain a fellow police officer for reckless endangerment. Let's say he's drunk, and you're just waiting for a supervisor to come. As you wait, you warn him of his Miranda rights. So during a detainment, are you really, like, you don't necessarily need to warn them of their Miranda rights because again, if you're gonna ask them incriminating questions, a smart person, even when you detain them, um, a detainment is more like an investigation. Just think about it that way. When you do arrest somebody, warn them of their rights because essentially they're gonna use these rights during the investigation with detectives. Otherwise, when you warn them on their rights during the detainment, now right, they're just not gonna answer you at that point, even when you arrest them. So really, it's just these four are just what would you do. You couldn't add an E and just say what would you do other than these four. Just know that a lot of these scenarios are part of Roblox. Some of these scenarios can be applied into real life too. So just if you want to be safe, just ask yourself these questions. In conclusion, so when performing your duty as law enforcement, you have to have a good reason for every action you take. Be aware when you do conduct a traffic stop, you are going off the basis of the stop. Asking for consent for a search is outside the traffic stop and deemed unreasonable. It prolongs the detention. So a Roblox tip for this game is that treat every life as it is a new life. Don't have any bias or prejudice against career criminals. Have any ego in law enforcement, and this applies into real life as well. Won't really have you last long in the career field. Be mindful of that. If you do have an ego and if you do have prejudice and bias, then I really suggest you to really change that mindset because you aren't gonna make it. You know, you aren't going to last long in that career field. Maybe in the past, yes, but nowadays when people are becoming more woke and shit, um, essentially you're just entering a field where you're going to be accountable for what you do. So really, essentially, just have a good reason. Just use common sense and be smart. Be objective. Don't be subjective. And that's really it.